Thank you for joining us at 6, everybody. I'm Yolanda Harris.
And I'm Andrew Kinsey. Let's get straight to our team coverage of the not guilty verdict in the Dr. William Husel murder trial. 10 TV's Kevin Landers live outside the old Mount Carmel Hospital with a look at what comes next.
But first, let's go out to Chief Investigative Reporter Bennett Haberly, who's been following this trial closely from start to finish. Bennett?
Yolanda, for Dr. William Husel and his legal defense team, this was a victory. Confirmation, in their view, that the justice system worked. But for the patients, the family members of those patients, this was another day of frustration and disappointment and another turn on a roller coaster they've been riding for 3 years.
Count 14, we, the jury in this case, being duly impaneled, sworn find the defendant not guilty as to count 14 of the indictment for murder.
It has been an emotional case. His attorneys acknowledged the same was true for Dr. William Husel, who shared this moment with his attorney, Diane Menashe, as the jury found him not guilty of 14 counts of murder. The former Mount Carmel physician was fired in December of 2018 and was accused of ordering excessive dosages of fentanyl and other drugs that prosecutors alleged hastened the deaths of these 14 patients. But the jurors didn't buy it. Throughout trial, his defense team countered that his dosing, while aggressive, was meant to prevent suffering in patients who were dying.
For me, this case was about intent. Did William Husel ever intend to kill any of his patients? Not just these 14, but anyone that he ever treated. And I believe the jury clearly spoke to that, and so did the evidence that, he did all these life-saving measures, whether it was CPR or giving, intubating patients, that certainly his last effort was never with the intent to kill or hastens anyone's death. His intent was to provide comfort care.
Family members of patients who observed the trial have expressed frustrations and disappointment. After their loved ones died, the hospital called them in late 2018 and 2019, telling them their loved ones may have received too much medication. It spurred lawsuits and legal settlements from the hospital totaling more than $20 million. Husel's legal defense team has said repeatedly that what happened here is a civil matter with an entirely different standard of proof than a criminal case. A case they say never belonged here. Has the weight of an acquittal sunk in with Dr. William Husel?
Well, I hope every minute it will sink in more. That's what I told him. I said, as you leave the courthouse and you're in the car, look at your watch every moment and think, I'm 5 minutes into the rest of my life.
And that video you just saw there at the end was a video of a truck carrying Dr. William Husel, his wife, and 2 others as they left the courthouse this morning. Andrew?
Bennett, what can you tell us about the jury in this case? As you know, they were deadlocked for a while.
Right. Just on Monday, they came back around lunchtime Monday, said that they were deadlocked, and obviously they had to work through some things. The judge took reporters who have been covering this case into the jury room after the verdict was reached. It was completely empty, but we got a chance to see where they went through that process. We knew that at one point they were at an impasse, and it was clear, both through what the court and the defense attorney told us, that they were able to overcome that and reach this verdict. Here's how the judge described how they did that.
They basically started from scratch again and went through the whole case again. Now, they had the benefit of their charts and everything, but they went through each count individually and gave it a rereading, and they talked about reasonable doubt, which is the standard they have to live with, and then they came up with the verdict.
So all parties, the judge and even the defense attorney, we didn't hear from the prosecution directly, but they all said that they trusted the jury, that the jurors worked well through this process. Again, this legal case, the criminal case, is put to rest, but there are others still at play. William Husel has his own pending civil litigation against the hospital in a defamation suit. The patient family members are still suing the hospital and Husel. And there's a discipline matter still before the medical board that Husel will have to deal with both this summer and later on throughout the year. Reporting live inside the Franklin County Courthouse, Bennett Haberly, 10 TV News.
Bennett, thorough reporting and extensive reporting. Great job on your behalf for the last 3 years. We appreciate it.
Well, as Bennett mentioned, Dr. Husel's case now heads to a civil trial. 10 TV reporter Kevin Landers is following that part of this story. He joins us now from the former Mount Carmel Hospital where Dr. Husel used to work. Kevin?
Well, good evening. The attorney representing the families of the patients of Dr. Husel says even though Dr. Husel was found not guilty on all counts in the criminal case, it will have no bearing on the civil case. Today, he compared today's jury verdict in the Husel case to that of O.J. Simpson. The attorney representing the patients of Dr. William Husel say his strategy is simple to convince a jury to award damages against Husel and his former employer, Mount Carmel.
And we don't have to prove that Dr. Husel intended to kill people or what his intent was. We simply have to show cause and effect. He did something, it was wrong, and it harmed these patients.
It's a much lower bar than in the criminal case where the state had to prove Dr. Husel intended to kill his patients by overprescribing fentanyl. Medical malpractice attorney Jerry Leesburg said an acquittal in one case will have no bearing on what happens in the civil court. He compared the murder trial against Husel to that of O.J. Simpson.
How did that work for O.J. Simpson? As everybody knows, he was acquitted in the criminal trial and then had to take the stand and defend himself in the civil trial, and that ended up with a $35 million verdict against him.
Unlike the Dr. Husel criminal trial, where Husel never took the stand to defend himself, the civil trial will be different because Dr. Husel will be deposed.
The time for lawyer talk is over. We look forward to deposing Dr. Husel, and we will finally be able to answer the question that's been on everybody's minds: what was Dr. Husel thinking?
In the criminal trial, Dr. Husel was described as a doctor who did what was best for his patients. The attorney representing his patients planned to show the opposite.
Was his heart in the right place? We're going to find out, but it doesn't make any difference. You don't get to do what you want to do as a doctor in disregard for whatever accepted standards of medical practice are.
Now, in the civil case, a new set of medical experts will take the stand to try to discredit Dr. Husel. We also learned that during the criminal case, there were threats, both made electronically and through phone, to both the judge and witnesses testifying against Dr. Husel, and authorities are now made aware of it. Reporting live in Franklinton, Kevin Landers, 10 TV News.
Kevin, thank you. Now, in response to today's verdict, Mount Carmel says it's never been their place to determine whether Husel's actions were criminal, but they have extensive measures in place designed to prevent anything like this from ever happening again in our health system. That is their statement. And the Franklin County prosecuting attorney said Husel was carefully tried, and they accept the jury verdict.
Today's verdict in the Husel case marks the second major case in the last week where the Franklin County Prosecutor's Office has taken a hit. The first was last Friday when a mistrial was called in the case against former Columbus police officer Andrew Mitchell. He was charged with murdering Donna Castleberry. Now, former Franklin County Prosecutor Ron O'Brien's office initially brought in both of those cases, but after losing the election, Gary Tyak was taking over the prosecutor's office and is overseeing these cases. We talked to the former U.S. Attorney for Ohio's Southern District, a former prosecutor in his own right, about what this could mean for the county prosecutor's office.
Mistrials, it's going to happen. There's going to be hung jurors, and that's going to decision to make whether to retry that case. But you're going to get not guilties. If we're getting all guilties, then you're not trying enough cases. If you're getting all not guilties, then that's a problem.
Dave DeViller says a lot of people have left the county prosecutor's office in the last year or so, which means fewer prosecutors are trying more cases. We reached out to the Franklin County prosecutor's office about this issue. We have not heard back.
Well, make sure to check out the extended Husel verdict coverage on the 10 TV app. There you'll find full interviews with the attorneys from both sides.